Hello everyone, Chaos here, and welcome to another old-school RuneScape video. The Tombs of Amascut OSRS's third ever raid was released on the 24th of August of 2022. Some people might think that it is only accessible to players with high combat stats and nearly maxed gear, which might discourage some players to give it a try. But I'm here to tell you that even if you have base level 70s with minimum gear, you will be able to try this new challenge to improve your PvM abilities. If this video is helpful to you, consider subscribing with notifications on, and join our Discord to find partners to raid with so you can learn together. With this absolute monster of an update, there's something for everyone to enjoy. I'll get on with today's disclaimers rather quickly. Number 1, this multi-part guide will be uploaded shortly after release, and many things about Raids 3 are still being figured out. I'll give you as much information as possible for your first few clears, and if anything important is discovered, check the description or the pinned comment for even more information, and also for you to continue to the individual boss guides. Number 2, I will mostly focus on the solo run, but I will note the different mechanics if you are there in a group. So first things first, how can you join your first Tombs of Amascut run? Raids 3 is locked behind a master level quest called Beneath the Cursed Sands, and you will need completion of the contact quest to even start it. After completion of the quest, you will stand in an area called the Necropolis, and this big pyramid is where the Tombs of Amascut is located. You can quickly get back in there with the Fairy Ring Code AKP, or with a charged Pharaoh Scepter after clicking the Commune option on this obelisk southwest of the pyramid. At the time of making this video, this will teleport you to the obelisk itself and not inside the raids lobby, which is a little stupid, but do what works best for you. As for your gear and inventory, I'll do something that may seem lazy, but it's going to make sense in a little bit. I'm going to show you the absolute minimum gear you can clear a raid with, followed by a mid-level setup. And then I'll show you what I personally take to my runs, so you can upgrade according to your levels and your needs inside of the raid. I'm not going to mention every single upgrade for every single slot for every single combat style, because of how the difficulty scales up. But with enough practice, you will know what you need for your next couple of runs. For your bare minimum gear, you are good to go with Void Switches, a Whip and a Defender, a Blowpipe, a Trident of the Seas, Ancient Spellbook with Ice Spells, a DDS, and your standard setup for food and potions. Remember that you may get poisoned or venomed during the raid, so taking something to cure you might come in handy. You can obviously scale down to a Dragon Scimitar, a Crossbow, a normal staff, but the less powerful gear, the longer it's going to take. The mid-level gear features a Serpentine Helm, Torso and Obsidian Legs, Blessed Dragon Hide, and finally Aaron's Robes. If you have anything higher than this, being a combination of Bandos or Armadillo, which are somewhat affordable unlike Torva, Ancestral, and Masori, go ahead and swap them if you can. Now, I want to take a second to talk about the Bow of Ferdinand and the Crystal Armor. I have this as a completely separate category because, as most of you know, this combination of items can be really expensive, and of course, it covers just one combat style. The bow alone is more than twice the price of the mid-gear setup, so dumping your entire bank for one isn't really that recommended if you are going to run a Dragon Scimitar and a normal Trident, of course. However, it will come in very handy in every single room except at Kephri. So, if you have the money for it, as well as upkeeping the charges, you can equip it for most of the raid as long as you have decent gear for the other combat styles. By decent gear, I mean items you saw previously like a Zamarakian Hasta with a Torso, and at least a Trident of the Swamp with Aaron Robes. I would say this is a pretty decent purchase because the next best melee weapon after a Zamarakian Hasta is a Rapier and of course the Fang, both of which are also quite expensive. For your magic weapon after the Trident of the Seas and the Trident of the Swamp, a Sanguinesti Staff will be incredibly useful, followed by the Tumican Shadow, which, if you have the money for, you probably don't even need this guide. And as most of you know, after Bofa we have the Humble Twisted Bow, which will run you a very modest 1.2 billion GP. So for weapons, this is your best path. Of course, this is also applicable for armor. After Void and the items shown in the second setup, if you can afford an expensive weapon and you have some cash left for Bandos or Armadillo, go ahead and purchase those, and after you get some drops, Ancestral will be your next best option. And finally, this is what I've been running for my solo and group raids. I don't have the money for Torva and Masori yet, but things like a Twisted Bow or Dragon Claws will come in very handy through the battles. You can obviously go higher than this and bring as many switches as you're comfortable with, but it's going to depend on how you feel with the difficulty of the raid. As I usually do for my boss guides, we are now going to talk about plugins. At the time of making this video, there are no Raids 3 specific plugins other than one called the Tombs of Amascut, which, to be quite fair, doesn't exactly work right now, or I might just be a dumbass and don't know how to use it. But in the future, if something good is made for the raid, I'll let you know in the description and in the pinned comments. Other than that, I highly recommend a plugin called Inventory Tags for you to be able to color code your items according to what attack style they belong to. Some people may roast you for it, but remember that the only human interaction they have is when they go to the store to buy Mountain Dew bottles to chug them in one sitting, to then fill them with piss to avoid going to the bathroom as they play old school RuneScape. So don't you worry about them one bit. You can left to shift click your items to customize the color for them, and I do red for melee, green for ranged, and blue for magic. A plugin I've fallen in love with is tile indicators. You can activate the true tile indicator for you to know exactly where your character is at all times. In the past, I've said that I don't need this to be decent at PvM, but now I see how much it can help you out, especially in a raid where movement is part of the key to success. Other than these, you can mix and match any plugin you normally use for high-level bossing and PvMing, as there are way too many useful tools for you to make the Tombs of Amascut a lot better. Like I said before, if there's anything developed specifically for the raid, I'll let you know in the description or in the pinned comment. Once you're inside the pyramid, it is time to prepare for the raid. But before you are geared up and ready to go, you will need to make a party even if you are going in solo. To do so, click on the obelisk in the middle of the room. You will see a list of people who currently have a group to join, and you can see information such as the number of players, the host, preferred KC, number of invocations active, raid difficulty level, raid type, and finally how long the party has been recruiting players for. You can also filter groups by friends and clanmates only to avoid so much clutter. If you want to make your own, go ahead and click My Party in the middle of the bottom of the list. By doing so, you have 4 tabs to work with. The first one will show you your current group. The second one will show you people who have applied to your party. The third one will show you active invocations. And the fourth one will give you a summary of the raid and its modifiers. As a guest, you can only see information and not play around with the settings. We will jump into the difficulty system and invocations in a little bit. But for some other points of interest inside, we have the following. The camel is going to act as your bank for you to pre-pot, and to the left of the entrance you have a chest for you to grab your stuff if you die. This is going to cost a whopping 500k, so make sure to practice enough before you plank and chuck half a mil to the garbage. Finally, there's a spot for you to claim your rewards if you left the treasure room without opening your chest. If there's something for you there, it will look like it has some loot on it. If not, it will just be close to wall. Also, after your first completion, 3 of the lesser gods will be hanging out in the lobby. You can talk to Misa for her to tell you to talk to them, and after doing so they will disappear. Go back to Misa to claim an XP lamp you can use on any combat stat, which will grant you 50,000 experience. In hindsight, I wouldn't have done this because they look cool just hanging out in there, but now you know. It is time to talk about invocations and the difficulty system in the Tombs of Amascut. I will dive deeper into the first one because it will naturally lead us to the second topic. So, the reason I said this raid is open to people with base 70s or maybe even less is because of the new difficulty system called Invocations. This you can fully customize according to your needs. In the past, raids only had one difficulty system being normal. This was then expanded to challenge mode with Chambers of Zebak. And then, a few years after the release of the Theater of Blood, both entry mode and hard mode were added. Entry mode being able to teach you the mechanics while also feeling like a worthy challenge, and hard mode which made just one major mistake enough for your whole team to wipe. With Raids 3, this formula was completely revamped in the best way possible. I'll talk about how invocations work, how they make the raid scale up, and then give you a short explanation as to how some of them change the entirety of the raid and not just for specific boss fights. To put it in simple terms, an invocation is something you can activate during a raid to give it an extra challenge. And the more invocations you have active at once, it will make the raid more and more difficult, which you can see in the summary tab. These challenges range from being allowed to die up to 10 times before you are sent outside, all the way up to crazy ones like not being able to eat or drink potions, and even reduce the effectiveness of your prayers from 100% all the way down to a cheeky 65%. With every invocation, your enemy's health, defense, damage, and accuracy will increase according to the points each invocation provides, not with a set number of invocations active. So with all this in mind, you see how every time you turn on an invocation, these numbers go up? As I said before, this is a raid difficulty. An invocation rating between 0 and 149 means that you are in an entry level raid. An invocation rating between 150 and 299 means that you are in a normal level raid. And for the absolute gamers, an invocation rating between 300 and 600 means that you are in an expert level raid. You will also notice that the more invocations active, some items have a golden frame around them. This is a loot potential and items you may receive after completing a raid. It is possible to obtain loot that's not highlighted, although it's going to be extremely unlikely. From 0 to 49 you may obtain the Thread of Elidness and the 3 Charis Partisan Jewels. From 50 to 149 you may obtain both the Light Bearer and the Osmum Tim's Fang. And anything above 150 will make you eligible to obtain the Word of Elidness, Masori Armor Pieces, the Tumikin's Shadow, and of course the Pet. At the time of making this video, it is still unknown exactly how rewards are calculated and how they will scale up with your difficulty setting. And it's going to take maybe a few months for Jagex to give us more detailed information. But for now, all you can do is cope and hope for good loot, even if it's the Charis Jewels and of course the incredibly useful Thread of Elidness. So that's a brief explanation of how invocations affect your raid, and there are some which affect the entire run. Here they are quickly explained in the order of the settings board. The invocations Try Again, Persistence, Softcore Run, and Hardcore Run will limit the overall number of attempts your whole team is allowed to have to 10, 5, 3, and 1 respectively. If none of these are selected, you can die indefinitely until you beat the boss or until you leave the raid. If you die outside a hardcore run, every death will grant you a random amount of an item called Honey Locust, which acts as food and prayer potions in case you wasted most of your supplies on a boss. The invocations Walk for it, Jog for it, Run for it, and Sprint for it set a time limit for you to finish the raid. If you fail to make it in the specified time, your points for said invocation will be deducted. Respectively, these times are 40, 35, 30, and 25 minutes. The invocations Need Some Help, Need Less Help, and No Help Needed will decrease the number of supplies provided by the helpful spirit in the middle of the raid, but more about that later. Respectively, they will decrease the amount of supplies offered to you by 33, 66%, and last one will make it so you don't get any supplies during the raid. The invocations Walk the Path, Path Seeker, Pathfinder, and Pathmaster will make it so the boss fights get increasingly more difficult in terms of hit points, damage, and the speed of their mechanics. We will cover how this scales up the difficulty of the fights later on. Walk the Path will make it so all bosses level up after completing a room, meaning that your first boss will start at 0, and the last one will be level 3. Path Seeker, Pathfinder, and Pathmaster will increase all boss fights by a few levels depending on the order you do them. And yes, Walk the Path and Pathmaster do stack together. The invocation Quiet Prayers will make your protection prayers 90% effective, while Silent Prayers will make it so they are 75% effective. Activating both at once means your prayers will only be 65% effective, so this is not for the faint of heart. On a diet will not allow you to use any hard food at any point inside of the raid. This goes for fish, honey locust, and an item we will talk about later called silk dressing. Dehydration will not allow you to drink any sort of potion at all at any point inside of the raid. This includes brews, super restores, combat potions, and of course the potions you get mid-raid from the helpful spirit. Finally, overly draining will make you use 100% of your special attack energy when performing one, whether it be a weapon that uses up to 25% or naturally 100% of your energy. It is important to note that some invocations need to be active for you to activate another one, and for a certain category you may only activate one of them. For example, for Death, Time, and the Path challenges, you may only have one active. But for the final boss invocation called Insanity, you need to have Overclocked 2 active. And for that to be active, you need to activate Overclocked. So play around with them to see all of the combinations you can have here. Before we gear up, remember how I mentioned a helpful spirit when we talked about invocations? Well, the helpful spirit is an NPC that will appear after your second and fourth room during the raid. He will have 3 bundles available for you: Life, Chaos, and Power. These are a combination of the following items. The yellow potion is called Nectar and acts as a Saradomin brew. The pink potion is called Tears of Elidness and acts as a super restore. The silk dressing will heal your health over time, and the blessed crystal scarab will heal your prayer over time. The white potion is called Ambrosia and will completely recover and overheal both your HP and your prayer. The blue potion is called Liquid Adrenaline, and it's going to make all of your special attack cost half the energy. And finally, you have Smelling Salt, which will act as an overload similar to Raid 1. In the Life bundle, you will only be offered Nectar, Tears, Silk, Scarabs, and Ambrosia. In the Chaos bundle, you will be offered a small amount of all the available items, although not really guaranteed to have at least one of each. In the Power bundle, you will only be offered Smelling Salts and Liquid Adrenaline. I personally always pick Power first and then Life to have Salt help me through the rest of the raid, and then Life second to have Emergency Ambrosia for the final boss. If you're going through your first couple of runs regardless of the difficulty, I recommend picking the Life bundle, and once you start getting the hang of it, you can move on to the Cows bundle. When you feel like you can clear a raid in your preferred difficulty without using many healing items, the Power bundle will sure come in handy for the last 2 rooms and the final boss. As you remember, there are certain invocations that will reduce the amount of supplies offered if you're feeling up for the challenge. As for the special attack invocation, the liquid adrenaline will cancel it out, and specs will cost the same amount. Once you have geared up, pre-pot, started a party, and set your invocations, it is time to go into the Tombs of Amascut. Once you're inside, you will see 4 paths with an icon representing each portion of the raid. They will contain what's known as a puzzle room, followed by the actual boss fight. The Path of Krondus will have you feed a tree in the middle of the room, as you collect water from waterfalls protected by obstacles. You will then face Zebak. The Path of Scabaras features 5 intricate puzzles mostly related to memory and math. You will be continuously attacked by little scarabs, and then you will face Kephri. The Path of Apminkin will have you fighting against multiple types of baboons, which you will have to defeat as you fix issues inside of the room. You will then face Baba. The Path of Heads features a light-based puzzle for you to guide a beam from one statue to another while using mirrors and avoiding shadows. You will then face Akkha. It is extremely important to note that you may choose whatever order you want and you don't have to follow a specific path. Upon defeating all 4 bosses, you will then move on to the final challenge, a twin boss encounter where you will face the Wardens. This is a 3-phase battle which we will cover in depth in a future video. This is just a glimpse of what's coming if you dare step inside Old School RuneScape's 3rd ever raid. The first 4 rooms will follow this format. I will explain how to easily beat the puzzle room and the differences between solo and group runs. And of course, I'll guide you through the boss fight itself. After that, I will show you how invocations change a boss fight, and finally I will give you extra tips for both the puzzle room and the fight, for you to maximize your efficiency and improving little by little. Ladies and gentlemen, choose your invocations, grab your gear and pre-pot, and let's take a look at every single challenge that awaits us in the Tombs of Amascut. You will find links to all of the bosses in the end card or in the description to continue your path. A massive thank you to all my channel members. You boys and girls are absolutely amazing, and you have no idea what your support means to me. If you want to support this channel further, click the join button below for a monetary subscription, so you can see all of the cool perks and benefits you can get in the videos, in the live streams, and in Discord. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the boss guide. You have an amazing day, have an amazing week, and I will see you then. Peace.